Council. The first item on our agenda is an Economic Development Council update by Mr. Colonel Retired David Buck Dellinger. Sorry, we're fresh out of ruffles and flourishes, Colonel. If you would, please give us an update on what's happening, all the happenings that are there. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for City Council for letting me address you. We're going to, in the future, I'd like to give maybe twice a year update on what the EDC is up to. And as a reminder, the EDC is made up, it's a 501c6 organization made up as agents to execute the goals and missions of the IDB, the Chamber of Commerce, the Conventions and Visitors Bureau for Tourism, as well as the Aspire Foundation. And the common purpose of all these organizations, while they all have a different mission statement and purposes, the common purpose of these organizations is to increase the economic opportunity and livelihood for the entire city, county community. So I've got some slides, I can refer you to those. I think they're for sure on the screen. They're probably on your laptops as well. So this key event started in May, but in April we did a groundbreaking for Kupi, which is a Japanese mayonnaise company in our industrial park. In May, we're kicking off our 2025 to 2029 strategic blueprint. We're now in the final year of our current strategic blueprint, which sets our goals and objectives for a 5-year period. Tuesday of this week was the Chamber of Commerce had their gala. FedEx is opening this month. If you've driven by the FedEx facility that's on Industrial Boulevard next to Han Cook, the FedEx trucks are all in the bays and they're operational. It looks like they're going to be fully operational in a couple months. Next June the 6th, we're having our groundbreaking for Dongwa Electrolyte, which is it's a company that puts the materials inside the cathode battery for electric vehicle cars. It's a $90 million project, 68 jobs coming to Clarksville, Montgomery County. On May the 26th, 28th, I've got to go back one, I jumped over one. We're having the Queen City Soccer tournament in the city. June 2nd to 3rd, if you've been by the Liberty Park, you've seen all the poles that are in the ground out there. We're having our Tennessee Valley Lineman Rodeo. June 14th to the 17th, Future Stars football will be in the city. July 12th, 16 is our AAU Boys World Basketball Championship. These are Visit Clarksville events that bring a lot of folks to the community. And not listed on this, but was announced earlier this week from June 13th to July 15th. June 13th through July 15th, we're having our Music City Collegiate Softball League. We'll be visiting. On June 29th through July 1st, we've got the Grandkids of Country Music tours coming out of here. It's a pretty neat bus tour that we support and for the community. And then in August is the LG Chem groundbreaking. We don't have a date specifically for that, but the LG Chem is the $3.2 billion project that you might have heard about lately. That was announced last November. That's a pretty big deal for our community. It's the largest foreign direct investment project in the state's history, and the most significant foreign direct investment project for the United States. So I just wanted to give you this slide, and this is available to you. This lays out the job growth from what we know of, and it's kind of where we're holding ourselves to from 2023 to 2030. So this is, as you can look at this, if you look in the bottom right corner of this chart, we're expecting to create 3,724 new jobs over that 6-7 year period. And as you follow each line, you can see each announcement in each company on when they plan on filling those jobs. And the red box signifies with the year that factory or that facility is going to open and be fully operational. In most cases, they open and then they continue to grow their population of workforce. So as you look across the bottom, you can see how many new jobs we expect to create per year. So this is very important to us as we talk to our housing community, our house builders, our realtors, so that they project the number of lots they need to have available in that year, and as well as what is the price point of those potential new houses or rental properties to meet the workforce demand. So in addition to this is an overview. We've broken this down to what the salaries are going to be for those people in those jobs per year. And we've got that available for our house builders and our realtor community to make sure that we've got the housing stock available to support this job growth. So some other things that we're working on. This is, most of you are all aware of the redevelopment districts, the Turn Bridge, the Civic Plaza District, the Vulcan Frosty Morn District. All those have active potential projects coming to the TIF committee and the Industrial Development Board. And all of you that have a project that is getting ripe, my words, italicized, is if they're getting ripe, you've been spoken to about those projects, and city council members, persons, you should be aware of those. And we look forward to getting feedback from you as all those, have you been introduced to them, you've given us the feedback on the spot. Janet Wilson, who's in the audience, is the CBID director that's managing all this. And Josh Ward is the one that's managing the C5 lots master plan. That little bit of discussion real quick about the C5 lots master plan. That is not on city property, but that 20-ish acres is is near the Popeyes, Burger King, and Taco John's on Rossview Road, just north of the city's future park facility on Rossview Road. So whatever happens on those C5 lots, we're looking for grocery, healthcare, anything to support the industrial park and those workers that work there every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to support the active livelihood of those folks in the industrial park. Last slide, just some highlights about, if you've picked up on some of the things I've talked about, I've been talking about tourism and Chamber of Commerce activities and Conventions and Visitor Bureau and industrial development. So a little bit more information about tourism, especially coming out of COVID. When we made this slide a couple weeks ago, we were 9.2% better than any previous year. Just this week, we updated that number. Given one more month of activity, we are 9.9% better from tourism activity, better than any time in our history. 88% more hospitality jobs have been created. While our revenue is up, we're still not fully recovered to 100% of the number of visitors and overnight stays that we used to have in tourism. So we're 97% of where we were pre-COVID. We second highest growing community in terms of tourism in the state of Tennessee, which is a big deal when you think about Sevier County, Davidson County, Shelby County, Blount County, Knox County, and then you have Clarksville, Montgomery County that's growing faster than most of those. And then our last comment, we get to pound our chest for a little bit, and because most of you wouldn't be aware of these, but in our world, we've won the FDI Deal of the Year from Business Facilities Magazine and the EDO of the Year, Economic Development Organization, from Business Facilities Magazine. So for us, those are the preeminent magazines that hand out awards for cities and EDOs like us across the country, and then finally the Mac Conway. So those are some of the big activities. I want to highlight one more thing. I got my note. Historic Collinsville continues to be a radical success just south of the county, in the south of the county area. If you've not been out there, I invite you to. It's open, it's active. There's reenactment folks in all the facilities, and Historic Collinsville is just doing great. So that is the end of my presentation, Mayor and council persons.
Thank you, Mr. Dellinger. We have time for maybe a couple of questions. Council person and birthday person, Amber Marquis, you are recognized.
Thank you. And thank you to my fellow colleague over here for the lovely ribbon. I just had a quick question because I don't recall seeing the slides in my email. Can that be sent to all of us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
You'll send that to the clerk. She'll distribute.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll get it out. Thank you.
That was an easy question.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Hi. First, I'd like to say thank you for all that you do. I appreciate it. I would like to just say or ask, you know that the FY 2023 income limits have been released from HUD. And at the 80% income level in our community for a family of four is now $58,400, which equates to approximately $28 per hour. So I'm wondering if, as you're recruiting businesses, are you keeping an eye on that and really saying no thank you to companies that do not support, bring in the business where we can make a living wage.
Yes, ma'am. So all of these companies that we don't entertain or respond to their request for information unless they're making at least $22 an hour for one individual homeowner. So that HUD data is based on a family of four, and is anticipating that there's more than one breadwinner, a money maker in that household. So in our world right now, the things that we're doing is we're only looking at those companies that are making 22 to and above as starting salaries. Now that is starting salary for someone that has no skills. The Dongwa facility that's going to groundbreak June 26th, the starting salary is for the first year employee is $55,000 a year for that employee. So that's the kind of projects, that's the only projects that we're going after to date.
Okay, that's fine,
ma'am.
thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. In a few years back, the Industrial Development Board participated in an affordable housing complex on Lafayette Road and Cunningham Lane. Are any of the organizations within your entity looking at doing some future projects like that? My colleague, previous speaker, had spoken about HUD data, and right now we have a dire need for housing for people that are not making what is considered a living wage in our community.
Yep. So last year we approved 3 projects for low-income housing tax credit projects that we put a pilot with those, each one of those. This city council doesn't see those because I only have to take that through the county for approval. So one of those, they got their certificate of occupancy. It's 37 3-bedroom homes on Old Oak Plains. And we're highly encouraging those developers with low-income housing tax credit, 4%. This is all HUD geek speak right now, but that's what's available from the state is 4% LIHTX. And we are going after those mostly 3-bedroom developers because that's what our community needs. And, yes, the answer is yes. And we just had a conversation with anyone that will try to make those projects happen. And so we're one of only a couple counties that are really support a pilot to go along with the low-income housing tax credit to make that pencil, make it work from a business perspective for those developers.
Thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dillinger, for coming forth to share with us the information that you have provided us today. Now, on the Vulcan's property,
Yep.
and I know that we're looking at a lot of things to be put on that property. Would that be considered tax increments? Is the way this is going to be set up?
That project is in a tax increment district, and for those properties, those eligible costs, the developer can use TIF to offset for those eligible costs. And all eligible costs, reminder, are those items that are public good and have access to the public. So it's anything that's not behind a lock and key. So that could be parks, utilities, road infrastructure, sidewalks, street lights, anything like that to support the public. Amenities, attractions, entertainment that are public access, free, usually available for the public good.
Okay.
It's a long description, but those are the things that are eligible.
Okay. All right. And on your AAU Boys World Basketball, now you said y'all are sponsoring that?
So we compete nationally to incentivize these different tournaments to come to our community. We've generally had one age group of AAU here almost every year for the past 10 years. And that's been a recurring, for these sports events, we're a great community because we have affordable hotels. We have great access and we're easy to get to from anywhere in the country. So families like to come here for 3 to 4 day tournaments because it's an affordable option.
Okay. And so do you all pay for that out of your funds? How does this work?
We to put in a bid for that, we use Aspire Foundation dollars. So those are private dollars that return. And after every one of these events, our tourism department does an economic impact study to reply back to the community about how many hotel stays we had. We can actually track the dollar amounts of the restaurants and all the expenditures that's created through that. So we'll know after the fact what our economic impact is, but generally it's very favorable.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilperson Reynolds?
I'm sorry, you piqued my interest in your response to Councilperson McLaughlin. What was the house? Can you only support rental, or was it 3-bedroom housing that you were discussing? Was that for purchase?
It's for the rental properties. So
Only rental.
yeah,
properties.
low income housing tax credit is rental only
So that-
in this case.
okay, and that's all that you guys can work with.
Yes.
Okay.
That we've explored incentivizing, and our state statute does not let us do these products or support these products for home ownership. That gets into a housing authority, and as opposed to the economic authority. So there's different statutes that potentially the housing authority can support that, but I'm limited to commercial use, which means rental properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dellinger, for that excellent update, and thank you again. I'll echo the comments of my colleagues. Well done. We're now ready for the Planning Commission, and as Mr. Tyndall approaches, I want to welcome officially Councilperson Carrie Lovato to the council. And then one more time for the birthday councilperson over here to my right and your left. Happy birthday, Mr. Tyndall.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have several cases to go through tonight. And a great update by Mr. Dellinger. I appreciate everything they do. They definitely keep us busy as well. First case we have tonight is a case that you saw a few months ago. It was remanded back to the Planning Commission to add some property so that it complied with R4 instead of C2 regulations. The applicant revised the request to be R4. This is an application of Dunlop Development and Regional Holdings LLC. The agent is Richard Garrett. This is now 2.75 acres, currently zoned ag and requesting to go to R4. It is an extension of the R4 zoning classification. The property fronts Needmore Road, south of Needmore Road and Center Stone Circle intersection. This is in City Council Ward number 9. Currently, there's a single-family residential home on site and a vacant parcel. And the applicant's statement is to develop townhomes between the existing townhomes and the City of Clarksville salt storage facility. And you can see the R4 to the west that wraps around one single R3 parcel. That was part of the problem last month where that small parcel that fronted Needmore didn't touch the R4 and didn't have the minimum 2 acres for R4 new zone. This now complies with all those regulations. Looking out of Centerstone, you can see the property across the street. Here's the tail end of that construction at Whitfield Road and Needmore Road. It does go in front of this property, and one of the comments was to accommodate any improvements that would be needed to support that project out there. This is the one parcel that is basically between both the multifamily and the single family, multifamily and the rezoning request right now. And this is looking back toward Whitfield Road. Property is on your right. Other department comments and concerns would require a gravity sewer extension. Sidewalk will be required and some roadway improvements would be required per Clarksville Street Department. No other comments or concerns from other departments. Historical estimates would be 33 units. However, the property in the back is very rough and it's kind of skinny, so we don't expect them to build that much. The applicant stated 12 from the floor at the Planning Commission was their anticipated amount. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 multifamily district is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern and is an extension of the R4 zoning district. Adequate infrastructure will serve the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question about item number 1, ordinance 127? Seeing none, we're ready for item 2, ordinance 128.
This is Planning Commission case Z21 2023, application of J&N Enterprises. This is 45.7 acres, currently zoned R2 and requesting to go to R4. It is not an extension of R4. It's a tract south of I-24, north of Tinytown Road, and east of Torrington Lane and west of Siegel Drive. Really doesn't currently actually touch any roads. It's floating out there in the middle of that field there off Tinytown Road. This is in City Council Ward number 8. This is also a portion of a property that had an R2A zoning in the last 6 months just to the west of this parcel. We couldn't find another shade of yellow for R2A, so you can see a faint outline up there. It's a vacant piece of land currently being row cropped. The applicant did not give a statement. Since there's not a lot to look at, we put the signs up at the end of the stub roads that would lead towards this property, but again, it's not adjacent to the property. A traffic assessment was received and approved by the street department. A main road through the development that will function as a collector road will be needed to be built as such, and we will look to address that at the subdivision development stage. Where this property touches Tinytown Road and where the Autumnwood Farms subdivision on the other side of Tinytown have both been growing towards each other, there is a warranted signal that would be out there at some point. We anticipate that per the traffic study, this development triggers the need for that road to go out to Tinytown Road at this time when this gets developed. It would be a more substantial road. Don't think of a local road, but something maybe shoulders or a 3-lane section. The street department has left that open to negotiation with the developer at this point of what they want to propose as a collector road, and they'll see if it applies. But that would then provide a more efficient way for this R4 development if it were to develop, because it doesn't front on Tinytown Road to get out to Tinytown Road and not have to use the local street system around it. Other comments, there are obviously sinkholes on this property, and you can see the school system comments listed. Historical estimates would be 548 total units. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 is not out of character with the development pattern along the Tinytown corridor, and the adopted land use plan encourages a mix of housing types. Adequate infrastructure will serve the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified relative to the request, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So you've actually touched on a couple of my questions. First of all, would it be possible for the council to get a copy of that traffic assessment or that traffic study? Because I don't see it here in the packet. My question initially was whether that traffic study took into consideration that Autumnwood Farms subdivision, which I understand is that's an approved subdivision plan at this point. So we're just waiting on.
It's been a very slow building subdivision plan. However, I don't believe the Autumnwood Farms has finished their plan out to Tinytown Road, as this one has not either. The area you see here in yellow for the most part does not have a preliminary plat on it. We have a concept plan that shows some of the major roads, but obviously that's not been engineered yet. It's a concept. Same thing for Autumnwood Farms. When it gets to the north part, it's more of a concept. They'll still have to come in for subdivision approval. That's when we get down to doing more of the calculations of, is the road 10 feet over this way or that way, due to sinkholes and other things.
Okay, so I guess I'm looking at this, and like you said, it's kind of an island in no man's land. It's not an extension of an R4. And I think just looking at this as an untrained, I mean, I'm not a community developer or anything like that, but I think it would be foolish to think that the rest of that surrounding area, that surrounding that island in no man's land, is not also going to try to go to R4 at some point as well. Because then it will be an extension of the R4 were this to change. Everybody knows how I feel about adding density to tiny town. We're talking about 1,500 people. I'll just leave it at that, but I'm interested in the traffic study. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'm also interested in the traffic study, but just a reminder of previous zonings, it's actually all of in yellow is the same owner, right? Because we voted for the R2A several months ago, and we were concerned that we were putting the density in the back of the property, and here we are again putting in the back. I understand C5 is in the front, but this will be the third rezoning of one area. I have concerns that we're piecemealing it, and then we're gonna end up with a road that doesn't support all of the added, because then, as the previous speaker said, they could come back and try to do more apartments in another corner, and we don't, and we've already built a road, and so then we're gonna push them back to the neighborhood, or we didn't build the road large enough. So, because it's all one owner, I know this, to the council, this is our only opportunity. Once we say yes, they get to come in and, by the law, lawyer up and do what they want, and we may not get a adequate road to support, and then they may come back and do an R2A later on after they've already built the road. So I have concerns that we keep getting more and more density ordinances on the same piece of property within the same year. That's all. No, I do have a question, I'm sorry. So am I wrong to have that concern? I guess that's my question to you. I mean, I was concerned with R2A in the beginning, and now this.
I guess the only thing I would take objection to is that they'll lawyer up and get what they want. I think we tried our best at the planning commission with the street department to get what we need. We actually deferred this a month to speak with the engineer and the owner of the property and told them this is what you're gonna need as a collector road. And they said, all right, we can, if that's what we're gonna need to do, that's what we're gonna need to do. That doesn't mean maybe a corner of the R2 gets built before they build the R4 and it still goes out of Barker's Mill or one of the side roads. But if this R4 develops, we believe it will trigger the need for that road system.
Just for clarity, a traffic assessment is different than a traffic study. An assessment is just a preliminary look at the potential traffic. A study is quite a bit more extensive and expensive for the developer to provide to us. So an assessment will give you some information, but a study will give you a lot more, and that comes at the site review.
Very good, Mayor. Yes, assessment's going to be more about the raw numbers of cars, general times of the day. The study's going to talk about how big the road should be, needs to be, anticipates future growth, and those other aspects.
Councilperson McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, so you had mentioned a future signalized intersection. Have there been any conversations with TDOT about that, since that's a state road on Tiny Town?
I believe there have, but I'd want to defer to the street department. They're the ones who've had some of those conversations. I do believe it is one of those ones that, when needed, it is available for them to construct or someone to construct.
Is the anticipation the Barker's Mill Road?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. And then I know this is for the other part, not necessarily what we're discussing now, but do you know if there are potential plans to connect to the subdivisions on either side, since it was mentioned that's the same property owner? And if so, potentially how many connections? Because I see like 6 or 7 stubs. I'm just curious how much traffic could potentially be flowing into those existing subdivisions.
Yeah, since Barker's Mill is not signalized, I don't believe having a signalized intersection would be a much safer route out for all the folks you see on the map there. Anderson Drive, for instance, Danbury, Egret, the one in the back there, Sandpiper. Those are sort of the major roads that are coming in.
Right.
I would expect them to tie into this collector. A collector will also have minimal driveways or no driveways on it, so that it's safer to travel on. You're not going to anticipate anyone making a left turn except for at a side street. But it would allow those neighborhoods to then use a safer, better road than the 2 roads, both Sandpiper and Barker's Mill, to exit out the Tiny Town Road.
Okay, but thank you. And I have to, my brain's working faster than your response. I apologize. And then off of that single owner property, that if you combine it all together, do you know how many potential accesses to Tiny Town Road would be allowed?
I'm not sure. The city ordinance would apply, and it's so many driveways per so many thousands of feet.
Okay, so multiple.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I can tell you all that a month ago, I was very concerned on this, but as Mr. Tyndall stated, this was deferred a month at the Regional Planning Commission level. And it was as I was concerned about it appearing as though all of the density was in the back. But Mr. Tyndall can also vouch that in our informal meeting last week, I actually asked him the question about that. And for me, the changing factor, in my opinion, on this was that collector road and knowing the benefit that it would go along with that, not just for the apartments being in there, but that goes right along with the question that was asked by the council person for Ward 2 in regard to knowing you've got those other subdivisions, and it would create a path for them to be able to come into that larger collector road and have an easier way of being able to get in and out of their community. So I just kind of wanted to give you all my thoughts on that and where I actually changed my opinion due to the changes that were made in the month that it was deferred.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, we're now ready for item 3, ordinance 129. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z30, 2023. This is 0.32 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to C2 by Hunter Wynn. It is not an extension of the C2. The property fronts the south frontage of Memorial Drive. This is in City Council Ward number 10. It's a lot with a single family home on site. The applicant did not give a statement for use. Interesting little area that has evolved over time. You have a little bit of C1 on the east, C2, R4, R3 with this parcel. Ironically, this is the only R3 parcel in the area. O1, C2, and then some more O1, and then of course R1 across the street and a little R4 across the street. So a little bit of everything. This area does have the feel of an older neighborhood, and this is just one parcel, and it's triangular in shape, so a little difficult to do something with. Here it is on Memorial as you approach it. It's that greenish house on the right. You have 2 duplexes on its right and a multifamily project on the left. Here's the property. The applicant did state that they hope to use the structure and not just tear it down and do something else. There's looking to the left, some multifamily that goes back, and then again to the right of that property. There's no gravity sewer in the area. There were no other comments or concerns from other departments. Estimates would be 4 units. Staff does recommend disapproval. The request is inconsistent with the land use plan. The adopted land use plan indicates that the present zoning classification, R3, is assumed to be correct unless the proposed zone is more consistent with the land use plan, the parcel was zoned incorrectly in the first place, or a major change of economic, physical, or social nature were not considered in the present plan, which have substantially altered the character of the area. If a more intense zoning classification were considered, the extending either the O1 or the R4 would be the more appropriate district. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Shekinah, be recognized.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. My question on this one, and you mentioned a little bit, I was concerned why the staff recommended disapproval, then the commissioners recommended approval. I just wanted to know the difference between the logic behind it.
Yeah, sometimes we don't always agree. And granted, they get the public testimony, the portion which we don't always get. And I see Councilmember Streetman chimed in to talk as well. Staff took it more from the position of the R3 is assumed to be correct. You could build 3 units on it. It's next to multifamily. Either leave it R3. If you want to do office use, you have O1 in the area. C2, and I gave the applicant the code book and said, look at the zones, look at the uses, see what best fits you. And he decided to go for C2 just because of its flexibility, because he just doesn't know. And I think that's the testimony he'll give next week, is he wanted the flexibility to do either multifamily or commercial.
Okay, thanks.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll answer the other half of that question. I was the one that actually made the motion for approval of the zoning request on this due to the fact that as was earlier stated, this was the only piece of R3 anywhere, as you can see on the map. Everything around it is either on that side of the road is either already a commercial type zoning, including, I mean, you've got the R4, but with C2, as was stated, there's the options. You could either do multifamily, which you have the R4 right beside it, so it wouldn't be any different on that, or the C2, which is just located right up the road. And of course, once you move further on down the map, as you can see, everything of that is some sort of commercial opportunity. And as he also stated, no, the applicant doesn't know exactly what he wants to do with it at this point, but he wants to be able to have his options of how he can utilize that space. So for me, and that was why I made the motion and was seconded, and I can tell you that it was voted 5-2 by the Planning Commission as a whole to approve it. Does that answer your questions from our aspect? Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I've asked this before, and I'm gonna ask it again. Can we not in C2 make a requirement that they have to do a percentage of business inside of C2? Because I know on C2 it allows smaller buffer zones, right? The buffer zones and the density is a little different from R4. But many people are using the C2 when their intention, they don't intend to do anything with business. They just want to be able to increase the density. And I guess I think we're getting dense enough with apartments. We're not leaving enough green space as it is. Would that be something that has to come from you, or can I motion from the floor to change that in the ordinance?
So I think I got this one, but Lance is going to hop up here in a second. First of all, when you use C2 for multifamily, you follow very similar rules to R4. I think they're exactly the same, but I'll double check if there's not one or two little things in there.
I think there's shorter, the buffers are different.
We'll check that. Then the requirement, so from a planning perspective, requiring them to do mixed use is very difficult. And if you talk to the development community, you'll realize when a bank lends you money, they're lending it usually on single family or commercial. But when you mix it, it starts throwing off the numbers. It's harder to get access to that capital. So unless you're coming with cash for projects, you maybe can't get a loan for 70 or 80% of your project because the banks don't have as much trust in it. So honestly, the whole reason you don't see a lot of mixed use is not necessarily because the developers don't always want to do it. It's because the banks and their lending institutions find it risky. I hope that does change, and I hope there's other ways to fund those kind of projects in the future. To your third point, can you change this? Yes. Council can ask the Planning Commission to study and bring an ordinance back at any point. It requires you to put a resolution together and get the support of your colleagues to kick that off. I'm not sure that's one that the Planning Commission would do themselves because I think they still see the value in it. There has been discussion from the Planning Commissioners and staff even that there is some weariness about some of the use of C2 at times, and we may find more of a middle ground instead of just fully cutting off the mixed use. But if you even lowered the density, maybe that's the incentive to get them. It's not as good as R4, so maybe it makes R4 the more desirable use. There's a couple carrots and sticks you can use instead of just saying it has to be mixed use. So we would want to look at that. But again, we could help you craft that resolution. We have a stock resolution for that you can fill in the therefore and try that next month if you want.
I do. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I know you and I have actually discussed that before, and you had wanted to wait until we had our comprehensive plan completed. Because like I said, I know we've talked about that multiple times based on some of the concerns we've had from a regional planning commission level.
I'd rather take a wholesale change to things like this than Band-Aids. I know we're working on the R3, which we should have back next month. And even the struggles we're finding there, just to fix one zone, I'd rather take the time to look at all the zones, either create new zones, massage out the uses, and bring back a whole comprehensive list of changes. But again, it'd be up to the desires of the council on what your time frame is.
Okay, and then I do want to clarify, just based on the timing of the question, often we do have people that come up that are asking for C2. We ask them what their intent is, and they'll flat out tell you then that their intent is multifamily. In this particular case, this individual, when asked what his plan was, said he does not have a plan. So I don't want it to seem as though he's asking for C2 when his full plan is something different. At this time, he doesn't know which way he would go.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you. Do we have anyone come speak out against it?
There was no one, we have no letters and no one spoke at the planning commission against this.
Okay. Yeah, just looking at it, I really don't see that much of an issue with this rezone. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just my take. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Tyndall. Under the C2, how many apartments are they allowed to build versus businesses? How many units or apartments are they allowed to build under this C2?
Yes, it's 0.3 acres, so that's 4 or 5.
4 or 5?
It's a difficult property with it being a triangle, but you could fit 5 per the zoning. Now, could you make it happen in the real world? You know, that's going to get a little tight with the setbacks. And again, if they build a business, they just have to meet the setbacks. So there's no limit on the size for the business as long as they meet the setbacks and the parking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item 4, ordinance 130. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Just so you don't get thrown off like I did when I first saw these, this case and the next case are a block apart and they look almost identical. So we didn't repeat the slides there. This is Z31 2023, application of Rolanda Amos. Richard Garrett is the agent. This is 0.4 acre parcel, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R6. It is not an extension of the R6, but this is an area that R6 has been prevalent. It's a parcel located at the southwest corner of Woodard Street and Gracie Avenue intersection. This is in City Council Ward number 6. It's a lot with a single family home on site. The applicant's statement: demolish current structure and build new R6 would improve area and provide additional housing. The structure in question is the house on the left. And there it is on Woodard looking back toward Gracie on your right. And a little further back looking at the property. Possible water upgrades would be required. They would need a flow test in the area to confirm those. Sidewalk would be required per the R6 ordinance. No other comments or concerns from other departments. Historical estimates would be 6 housing units. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R6 single-family zoning is not out of character with the development pattern. The adequate infrastructure will serve the site, including residential supportive uses such as mass transit and retail services in the area. The adopted land use plan indicates it's encouraged to maintain a desirable mix of housing types, and sidewalks will be required as part of the R6 classification. No other adverse environmental issues were identified relative to this request, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Mr. Tittle, you know, I brought this up at the planning commission, and I'll bring it up on the floor. I drove this neighborhood, and this looks, you're tearing down a house and putting up R6. I'm not opposed to R6, but this is gentrification. I mean, in an older neighborhood, do you think that we should start having caution when we start? Because where do we say, okay, you don't tear down that house, we let you tear down these 10 houses, but now I draw the line, or you know what I mean? I'm just worried about that because we're doing 2 houses in a row in the same neighborhood.
And that's my concern also from almost the opposite is when is not enough, or what house do you I don't want to start getting into this house deserves it and this house doesn't. I will say for this application versus the next one, this house looks like it's in better condition. And we even had someone speak against it well, maybe not against, but spoke up during the meeting about the next zoning case just a block away where the house is not in good condition and they've actually made it a 3-unit structure. Gentrification is a very difficult one. I call back to when we did the Red River neighborhood plan. There's sort of the big capital G gentrification. This is more the little g gentrification in that it's small incremental changes. Over time, you may be pricing out renters, but at the same time, we are bringing in 6 units, vice 1 to 3 units, which is currently there. So increasing density will actually bring up some areas, but at some point, if the tax base raises too much, you could actually be putting undue burden on the surrounding property owners. It's a very delicate subject, and it's something that happens slowly at times. But this is the property that we saw the opportunity to put 6 new single-family houses with home ownership in this neighborhood, which we think is a positive.
So not only about money, but also this is an older part of our community and preserving, you know, some of our history. I mean, I know it's not historically marked, but those are pretty much, those are, I don't know the age, but the homes are probably from the 30s or 40s when I drove through. That's what I geared it towards. So we're just gonna tear down everything.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to, I know that the previous person spoke at the Regional Planning Commission meeting, but the agent also spoke at the Regional Planning Commission meeting and stated that this is actually an older house that's in disrepair. That I've received an email about it as well. It's actually reached the end of its life cycle. The cost to rehab it would exceed the property value and or the ability for a tenant to afford what the rent would be for it to make sense. They are working with the current tenants to assist them with finding housing and housing assistance. I don't remember if it was this particular one or, as Mr. Tyndall referenced, the next one. Even the tenants stated, what about, you know, that they recognized that the house was in bad shape. So there is a point in time where when these older houses get to it, there, I don't know that you really have a choice but to tear down, or the cost that you would put into it would make it, you know, unviable for really anybody to be able to get. So.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, my question and concern is, these are gonna be family homes, not duplexes or apartments, is that correct?
Correct.
And so, do you think, and I don't know, would they be making anything Section 8 in that area?
So Section 8 is a voucher program. That
Right.
would be up to the property owner, and that's not something we get involved in.
But you know, you can always say something to them. You right there talking to them.
Any house can be Section 8 in the community.
I mean, you know, if they family homes, I'm happy for that too, but Section 8 is really needed. And I know that we had a meeting one time about a year ago. I think we had it out there at the airport, and the mayor, I think, put that together, his office, and they was talking about how they have the vouchers. I'm just putting this out there for some of these contractors. They got plenty of vouchers to pay for Section 8 homes. And I'm just saying, we do need this. We need Section 8 homes for the low-income people. This will also help to prevent gentrification. I'm just saying,
There
I'm
are
putting this
more
out
vouchers than homes out there available for Section 8 right now.
Right.
That's right.
there. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? We're now ready for item 5, ordinance 131. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
All right, going a block down Woodard Street. This is the application of Elliot Kershaw and Rolando Amos, and Richard Garrett is the agent. This parcel is just slightly larger at 0.45 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R6. It is not an extension of R6. The parcel is at Woodard Street and Central Avenue intersection in City Council Ward number 6. It's a lot with a single-family home on it, and the applicant's statement is demolishing current structure and bringing new R6 would improve the area and provide additional housing units. And there we are, a block over. And the house in question is on the left there with the pickup truck out front. And as you can see, the condition of this one is not quite as the condition of the other one. And this is the one that Councilmember Streetman spoke about, where the folks actually did come to the Planning Commission because they saw the sign and got the letter and said that they've been informed that they're going to tear it down. Their lease will be up. They said they don't know where they're going to go, but they also agreed that it is a home that needs to go. And there you're looking down Central. And then back up Woodard towards Central, property on the right. Just like the last one, water upgrades needed. Flow test will confirm that. Sidewalks will be required per the R6 ordinance. Historical estimates, again, would be 6 units. Staff recommends approval. It's consistent with the land use plan. The R6 is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, and at that meeting afterwards, the agent for this particular project did tell those tenants that he would work with them to find them a place to stay. The lease had already expired, but he's going to work with them to do that.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Councilperson Smith, you're
I
recognized.
have one short question. Were there any oppositions from the citizens around the area, except for that one person?
I wouldn't say they were in opposition, but they did speak on it. No other opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're now ready for item 6, ordinance 132. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
All right, taking a block and a half walk up towards Crossland Avenue. We didn't have to go too far to put signs up this year or this month. Case Z33, 2023. This is the application of Jimmy Terry. This is 2 parcels totaling 0.35 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to C2. It is not an extension of the C2, though there is C2 in the area. It is 2 parcels located at the southwest corner of Crossland Avenue and Greasy Avenue intersection in City Council Ward number 6. It's currently 2 single-family homes on 2 different lots. The applicant's statement is, quote, property has been listed for sale. Because of the condition of improvements, the corner is prime candidate for redevelopment. C2 provides the most beneficial options for the area, and as a double lot, there is adequate space for a small corner store or a mixed-use building. And there you can see the C2 to the west. The M property across the street is the old CMCSS Operations Center. So that's why that's always been that. And then you have some R4 townhouses or apartment building to the right. And then the county Pageant Lane building is that larger blue block there to the right. There's the 2 houses in question. Looking back up Crossland Avenue toward Gracie. This is from the gas station on the corner. And they're looking back from the school system building. And your back here is pretty much at the school system parking lot. The property's on the right corner. And this is what's next to it on the other side of Gracie. And there's a parcel in between this where you sort of see that dumpster. That's a parcel in between that, the parcels in question, and then this recent R6 construction behind it. No other comments or concerns received from other departments. Historical estimates would be 4 units. Staff recommends disapproval. The proposed request is inconsistent with the land use plan. The adopted land use plan indicates that the present R3 zoning is assumed to be correct unless the proposed zone is more consistent with the land use plan, a parcel was incorrectly zoned in the first place, or a major change of economic, physical, or social nature were not considered in the present plan, or substantially altered the character of the area. That's verbatim from the plan, by the way. The Crossland Avenue corridor has multiple properties in close proximity to this request that have currently zoned commercial and are vacant and in need of rehabilitation. Preservation of existing housing units should be prioritized over creating new commercial districts in an area with that substantial amount of underutilized commercial in more appropriate areas. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, we're ready for item 7, which is ordinance 133. Mr. Tindall.
Yep. I just call your attention to the previous one. There is one letter from the public, and it's a letter of support. We don't get those too often. All right. Thank you. All right. We deferred ZO1 2023 at the Planning Commission. I'm bringing forth to you a zoning ordinance change, ZO2 2023. You can look at the more detailed maps attached to the ordinance. This one is, bottom line, everything in yellow would be potentially added to, if this passes, the downtown urban design overlay. This is the predominant overlay district that takes in properties from 2nd Street Bridge at Riverside all the way to Crossland Avenue, Greenwood, and the properties in between down College. Currently ends around 7th Street, and this would take it all the way to Frosty Morn Drive, up Red River Street and all the parcels that front College Street in between. It does take one block on Main Street across from the fire department out there, also into the design district. The reason the Planning Commission and the Common Design Review Board did this was twofold. One is more technical than the other. The current ordinance says that the downtown urban design overlay follows the same district as Chapter 12 of the City Code, which follows the CBID district. Should the city ever change the CBID zone, it would change the downtown urban design overlay. Those zones have two completely different reasons. One is an improvement district, the other is a design overlay. The second is with the city and the county recently approving the TIF districts, all the other TIF districts except for the marina are already contained in a downtown urban design overlay. The Frosty Moore and Vulcan one is not. So in order to protect both the city's future investment in TIF dollars in the area, whether that means streetscape improvements or other improvements that would bring these areas up and breathe some new life into them, we'd also want them to look like they're new and breathe some life into them. The downtown urban design overlay provides some protections and does not require, say, the IDB to get into the design game with either pilots or TIF language. It lets the board that already does it do that work out there. All in all, there's 75 additional properties to be added, represents about 53 landowners. Some of these are Austin P properties. I did speak to Tom Hutchins out there. They are exempt from our regulations because they're a state agency. He did not have a problem with it. It just makes it a lot cleaner to run this down College Street instead of carving out every little parcel that they own up and down the way. With this, we already also had to update two other maps, and you can see them in your ordinance there. The standards and guidelines for the commercial district. So we just expanded the underlying use as commercial. It doesn't change any of the zoning there. And then the advisory height map, which we just extended for 4 stories and then 3 stories along a portion of College and then 2 on Main. Again, that's advisory height, so they can apply depending on the base zoning, whether it's CBD or C5. Those have other height restrictions. It's just advisory that that's the predominant building height in the area. This did go through the Common Design Review Board. There was a public hearing there. A few folks came out just for clarification purposes. I believe we had 3 different individuals or groups of individuals speak there. And we had someone at the Planning Commission ask some questions as well. So letters went out to everyone in the yellow properties. We obviously didn't put signs out for this one. Don't really know where we would have started or stopped putting signs out, but we did send out 75 letters to the 75 different property owners in the area. Planning Commission and staff both recommend approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, I'm just curious as to why it wasn't continued to the intersection of Craft Street down College.
We looked at that with some of the folks from the IDB, and even though the design district goes there, how do I say, a lot of those properties are a little beyond help right now. It's something we could probably consider in the future, but we felt stopping at the rail bed on Frosty Moore Drive was the better cutoff at this point. Those are all largely still manufacturing parcels, and we didn't want to get into the design aesthetics of manufacturing parcels. If we start seeing that area start to redevelop, maybe it's something we can consider continuing to extend it. It's not that hard to extend this district. It just requires sending some letters and a couple months of getting it to city council. But it was just a decision we made where we felt it was the appropriate place to stop it at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, and I was there at the meeting. I thought that the map showed College Street on there when you showed us the first map when we voted. It showed College Street and some other properties, and you said it was for mainly businesses, no homes. Is that correct?
That's still correct. Yeah, this is the same map that is College Street you see there,
Right.
up in the yellow, and a little bit of Main Street. 1 block of Main Street
Okay.
on the west side, and then the rest of it's all fronting on College Street.
So this is College here, right in here.
Yes,
it does. Okay. All right.
it does not take any single-family homes in the area, and
Okay.
if you didn't know, the downtown urban design overlay does not apply to single-family homes or duplexes. So if we inadvertently had one or one's being used that way, it wouldn't apply unless they ever change their use. But I believe all these are commercial properties that
Okay.
we grab.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, I just want to compliment you and your staff for the way you handled the situation with the one business owner who was actually there. Not to tell him to come back, but to actually have him go upstairs right then and actually work with him and show him, what is going on and educate him. I really appreciate that. Thank
We
you.
try, sir, and he did go up and spent about a half an hour with our staff member upstairs learning more. So, thank you.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, good evening, Mr. Tyndall. I have a question on the advisory building heights. Looking at the map and the different colors and what's recommended of no more than X stories, I'm just trying to understand how you guys came to the conclusion, because it's kind of almost like a little jigsaw puzzle. You have a small section that's one particular color, and then right across, pretty much touching, you have like let's use the red that goes from 5, and then you have one that touches it that's no more than 3. Then on the other side, it's no more than 2, and it just kind of seems like a odd skyline, I guess, pretty much. So I'm just trying to understand how you guys came about that.
Sure. The easy answer is this was a map from 1999.
Oh.
All we did was extend the map for now, because this map is called out a few times in the ordinance. It was
Okay.
easier to leave it in and just amend the area that we're bringing in to that blue on the right
Yeah.
than to just cut the map and then change all the language throughout the ordinance.
All
So
right.
one thing I didn't mention, and I think it's important to mention, there has been from some of the property owners in this area that are already in this downtown urban area and some of the developers that some of the guidelines could use some modernization. So
Okay.
our promise to them is, let us get this in, let's get through budget season, and we will set up a committee and probably get some expertise help to update the guidelines. One of those things is the advisory height. So that is our promise, that over the course of the next fiscal year, we will adjust some of the downtown urban design overlay points that are some of the more sticky points that we find as we're developing downtown.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're now ready for item 8, Resolution 66. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Okay. This time every year, you'll get a resolution from the Planning Commission regarding the capital improvement program, or what you call the public improvement program. This is your 5-year capital outlay for different projects by departments. Been vetted through the finance, the head right now, and the every planning commission and through the state is involved in the capital program somehow per TCA 13-3104A. The planning commissioners and the planning commission staff have received the city's CIP, had an opportunity to review it, and we're just returning a resolution for you that says we've reviewed it and find it acceptable in the same.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Tyndall, I saw comments and I emailed you, but can you share, I know there was 3 comments and one was a concern about Frosty Morn. Where can we find those, and can you share those concerns that were addressed?
The planning commission acted as a body and amended the resolution to send it sans those comments at this time. Instead, those comments were forwarded to the finance chair and the mayor for consideration, but they felt at this time, those 3 comments aside, that it was fine to send a resolution for this to be accepted by city council.
So can we not make those public, Mayor? Sure. Can you share those with us
Sure.
for the next meeting before we vote?
Any other comment or question? Okay, we're now ready for Resolution 56, the second part of the Planning Commission report.
This is the old business.
Yes.
I don't have anything else to report. We've received no additional feedback from the applicants or the public at this time. There was a public hearing held last month, and I'm here to answer any additional questions on Resolution 56, which is the plan of service, and 57, which is the annexation of this property out there. I know a few of you have called me through the month with this question or that question. I think I've answered them, but I'll answer any other public questions at this time.
Okay, we've got Resolutions 56, 57, and 106, 106 that also pertain to the annexation. Comment or question about any of those 3, Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Mr. Tyndall, do you have any knowledge that the property owners that are requesting this annexation had any kind of public meeting with the neighbors or property owners in that area?
I have not followed up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment or question? Okay, Mr. Tyndall?
Yeah,
you're-
one other thing on ordinance one oh
Oh,
six.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because I listened to last month's meeting. I think it was there was some questions about this ordinance. If the annexation doesn't pass and this doesn't pass and the red rule, this is a reapportionment ordinance. What I would suggest is if the resolution for annexation doesn't pass, you defer this a month. We amend it just to have that area off of Ward 7. We take off the area for Ward 12 and we still pass it as ordinance 106. So
Okay.
don't just dispose of 106 because the annexation goes away, just defer it and we'll amend it back because we still have to get that land from 2 months ago from Ward 7 into a voting district.
Okay. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so on our meeting today, on a previous one on Tiny Town, we looked at the density and decided that they had to do, as part of the rezone, we were going to require a connector. My overarching concern is that the density that they are proposing, and we're missing that opportunity to have that conversation. And then we really give them carte blanche to then leave it up to you. And I didn't mean to offend you when I said lawyer up. That was really, basically, once they come back to you, you can only follow the ordinances that are written, and you cannot say yes or no. So this is, as a body, this is our one chance to say, this is a lot of density. What's the safety precautions? And I don't see them written in like we have done, for instance, in our earlier ordinance on Tiny Town.
Right, because this is an annexation, not a rezoning. It has a rezoning attached. You can think of it as a rezoning, or you can think of it as an annexation being brought into the city. My ordinances and my regulations do not have necessarily a trigger that says this is the improvements that are needed. That's why we work with our partner organizations at TDOT or the street department or the county highway supervisor. So depending on the level of development of this parcel in the future would predicate any future improvements to Oakland Road or other areas, other streets in the area.
I just overarching have the concern that we're going for the highest use instead of, bringing it in and then having the conversation.
Understand.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify on your previous statement, because I was actually thinking about this today. Last time when we reviewed these two resolutions and ordinance, we combined them at once. So I guess per your advice, you're saying not to combine the one for the electing official purposes, because that way if the annexation fails, then we can amend that one and allow those parcels to at least have somebody that night potentially.
Well, I think you just combined them because you were deferring them. I would strongly recommend you vote on these individually
Okay,
next week.
gotcha. Thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Mr. This question is mainly for the mayor. Since we have this particular forum here, if we annex this property into the city, is there any way maybe we can consider establishing some type of park for Ward 12? Since Ward 12 don't have a park at this particular time in that
Well,
ward.
yeah, we intend to have a park in Ward 12. It may not be on these 600 acres or so, or whatever the size. It may be within the boundaries of Ward 12, but yes, we intend to do that.
Okay.
I don't want to commit to it being in this location,
Right.
because then you get property owners who get really proud of their property.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other comment or question? You're welcome. Any comment or question about this? Mr. Tyndall, you have one more item.
Yes, this is a one-off item that the planning commission, per the zoning ordinance, says I have to report back to city council when this happens, and this is likely the only time this will ever happen. There's a property on Memorial Drive extension next to Richview Elementary that was zoned MLUD back in 2008 and 2009. When you adopt an MLUD, you also have to adopt the site plan, and that site plan was approved in 2010, SR 40 2010. And for reference, there's the site plan with a current road configuration through it. And you can see right on the right side there is the actual language from the zoning ordinance. And I just call out the underlined area there. In the event that the Regional Planning Commission finds that the conditions which supported the approval of the final planned unit development plan have changed so as to raise reasonable questions regarding the landowner's or developer's ability to continue with the plan, it may withdraw its approval of the plan. And just above that, at the 3rd year mark, you're supposed to do this. So since 2013-14, the Planning Commission should have been asking this developer on an annual basis, are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? Here we are 13, 14 years later, and the Planning Commission, due to a roadway plan which was brought in on this plan, decided to withdraw the MLUD plan, which reverts the zoning back to its base zoning, which you can see as R1 in the south and C1 at the corner of Memorial Drive. No action is needed by City Council. I guess I'll answer any questions, but it's not, the Planning Commission voted on this and passed that.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Any comment or question? Seeing none. Oh, we have one. I'm sorry. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mr., since he hasn't done it, what is the precautions? What is gonna happen?
We have a roadway plan before us now, or if they wanted to develop it, they would have to bring back a rezoning application in the future.
Oh, roadway plan, okay, all right,
Yeah,
thank
we're
you.
basically rolling it back to 2008-9
Oh,
period.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's
Thank
an
you.
odd stipulation that lets the Planning Commission do that. It's the only zone, the MLUD zone, and in fact, speaking to legal counsel, we're probably gonna remove that zone next time we have a chance, because there's only one other property that has used it, and it's just worded pretty poorly.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Tindall?
All right.
All right.
See you next month.
Okay. I think it is next month. Okay. We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read quickly the consent agenda.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be moved for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 72, 2022, 23, second reading, an ordinance amending Part 2 Code of Ordinances, Title 12, Streets and Other Public Ways and Places, Chapter 6, which is cemeteries, of all of the official code of the city of Clarksville. Ordinance 105, 2022, 23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the purchase or condemnation of Frosty Morn abandoned railroad spur for easements and or rights of way and or fee simple title in connection with redevelopment of the city-owned former Frosty Morn packing plant property. Ordinance 107, 2022, 23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders Incorporated for zone change on property located at the intersection of Needmore Road and Trenton Road from C2 General Commercial District to C5 Highway and Arterial Commercial District. Ordinance 108, 2022, 23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Robert Mayville and Amanda Whitehurst for zone change on property located at partial fronting at the south frontage of High Street, 525 plus or minus feet south of Crossland Avenue and High Street intersection from R3, 3-family residential district to R6, single-family residential district. Ordinance 109, 2022, 23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Robert Meadows and Stephen Tyler Dennis for zone change on property located at 3 parcels fronting Everett Drive south of Hemlock Drive from R1 Single Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 110, 2022, 23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of James Burchett for zone change on property located on fronting New South Drive approximately 465 feet south of 1 Highway 76 from C4 Highway Interchange District to C2 General Commercial District. Ordinance 111, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Regional Holdings LLC for zone change on property located at a parcel fronting Oak Street, approximately 240 feet south of B Street from R3, 3-family residential district to R4, multiple family residential district. Ordinance 112, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Raphael Porter, TLRG Properties for zone change on property located at the northeast corner of Ford and 9th Street intersection from R3, 3-family residential district to R2A, single-family residential district. Resolution 63, 2022-23, a resolution approving a retail liquor store certificate of compliance for sale of liquor at 931 Liquors, located at 2896 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, Clarksville, Tennessee, 37040. Resolution 64, 2022-23, a resolution approving a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at Crossland Deli and wine 241 Greyhawk Trail, Clarksville, Tennessee, 37043. Resolution 65, 2022-23, a resolution approving appointments to the Ethics Commission, Housing Authority, Human Relations Commission, Power Board, Public Art Commission, and Sustainability Board. Adoption of minutes, May 4th, 2023, and May 10th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any comment or question regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the Finance Committee. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 104, 2022-23, first reading, postponed 4/25/23, an ordinance approving amendments to Clarksville City Code Title 9, Chapter 4, Operation of Vehicles, Section 9-447- Speed Limits Established, Title 9, Chapter 4, Operation of Vehicles, Section 9-449, Speed Limits in School Zones and Playgrounds, and Title 9, Chapter 1, Section 10-101, Certain Misdemeanors under State Law. Finance Committee did recommend approval.
Comment or question regarding this ordinance? Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
I guess in the most basic terms, if everything is researched out, we could potentially be voting on an amended version of what you see here before you next Thursday. So I just wanted to state that there may be a couple changes based on the legal review, but is that good, Lance? Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker.
Said it just as he wrote it. Councilperson Reynolds, on this ordinance,
Yes.
you're recognized.
I just wanted to say thank you for presenting this. I mean, everybody here, we all get the communication about getting people to slow down in the community and slow down in the neighborhood. And this is one step. Most people will not like it, but it is something that we can work towards. So I appreciate you doing your due diligence here.
If you obey the speed limit, you'll like it. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized on the committee report.
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay with everyone, can I read the next 8 before I discuss what they are?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, just put your feet
Taking a
up.
deep breath before I start. Ordinance 114, 2022-23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Jeff Burkhart Custom Properties, Inc. to the City of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 115, 2022-23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from MVM Properties to the City of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 116, 2022-23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Griffey Family Partnership to the City of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 117, 2022-23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Matt H. Rudolph Jr. Credit Shelter Trust B to the City of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 118, 2022-23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from J&N Enterprises Incorporated to the City of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 119, 2022, 23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Sango Ridge LLC to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 120, 2022, 23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Todd Morris Construction LLC to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 121, 2022, 23, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Main Street Investments, Tennessee, GP to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. All 8 of these were recommended for approval from the Finance and Gas and Water Committees, and all of these are just the regular ordinances that we've done before, where anytime someone builds a development and they're required for the development's needs to have to build sewer pump station, lift station, things of that such, then afterwards, once that is completed and everything is done, they give that over to us because we're going to be the ones that are maintaining it.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Any comment or question regarding these ordinances? Okay, Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I would also like to ask that the next 3, am I right? I'm sorry. Yes, sir. I'd like to ask that I read the next 3 together prior to any discussion on that.
Proceed, please.
Okay, ordinance 123, 2022, 23, first reading, the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain utility easements necessary for gas distribution improvements associated with the High Point Road gas main project replacement. Ordinance 124, 2022, 23, first reading, the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain utility easements necessary for gas distribution improvements associated with the McAdoo Creek Road regulator replacement project. Ordinance 125, first reading, authorizing the exercise of right of eminent domain to obtain easements and right of way to cross property necessary to construct, operate, own, and maintain the corporate Parkway Boulevard extension and associated utilities. Both the Finance Committee and the Gas and Water Committees voted in favor of approval of these ordinances. And Mayor, I would like to ask that we bring up the Director of Gas and Water, Mr. Mark Riggins, to be able to discuss these.
Sure. Mr. Riggins, if you don't mind, come up and give us 1, 2, 3s on it.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Council. For those who are on the Gas and Water Committee and or the Finance Committee, I apologize for the repetition. But just very briefly, as far as eminent domain goes, I've been deeply involved with that, with easement acquisition, property acquisition with Gas and Water for, it was one of my duties there for the better part of 10 years and been associated with that hence after as well. I've seen all different types of reasons for this, even such thing as a friendly condemnation. I know that sounds funny, but there are times where just whoever's negotiating the easements or right-of-way purchase and the property owner just cannot agree on every single item. And some of these, there are many different facets to that. And one in particular, I recall myself and this property owner, we just agreed to handshake and there was one little piece that we couldn't agree on and just agreed to go to court and let a third party, a judge, tell us what it was going to be. That individual also, because they didn't oppose the project, it was one small piece, they gave us a right of entry without us that saved us 60 to 90 days from having to wait for the court to give us that. There's other times where we just simply cannot make contact with the property owner. We cannot reach them in any way through mail or phone calls or any other avenue. There are times when there are so many heirs or property owners that we can't even find out who they all are. And the way is to go through the court system, go through communications through the newspaper, things like that, a way to try to identify who those are. And through that would allow us for the court to give us that right of entry. That way we could go ahead with the project while we're figuring out the details on the back end of that. And that's basically that in a nutshell. On these 3, on the first one, on High Point Road, the reason for that is the no contact situation. We've reached out every way that we know how to contact that property owner to no avail. That project there is the reason we're doing that. We've had some pressure issues in that area whenever it gets into double, but especially single-digit weather for multiple days in a row. And we need to go through there and upgrade those gas lines is basically what that is. And we need to do that now before it gets cold again and they need the gas. On the second one, which is McAdoo Creek Road, if you're familiar with the intersection of McAdoo Creek Road and Highway 12, on the northwest side of that where the Beaver Pond is, we have a natural gas regulator station there on that corner, which with some of the weather incidents we had last year, that water, because of that Beaver Pond, rose up and actually overcame the bottom run of that regulator station, which it's there for a reason, and I need that open to the air. I know TDOT had trouble with the ability to get in there and maintain that drainage line. We don't expect that to go away anytime soon. The best thing for us would be to relocate that over to the northeast side of the road. On that piece there, there's really not much that can be done with that property anyway due to the setbacks on both Highway 12 and McAdoo Creek Road, and also because of a buffer on McAdoo Creek there. On that one there, the property owner, very nice, cordial conversations and all, but not against the project at all, but basically just said they didn't want to sign, that this is the process we're going to have to go through. So again, here we are. As far as the third on the Corporate Parkway Boulevard extension, that is something that Mr. Buck Dellinger and I have, I'm actually bringing this together on behalf of both of us. So the way this started, we have at Athletic Avenue and Dunlop Lane. That is the terminus of an 8-inch gas line that I had plans to take that south along Dunlop Lane, make that loop to the east, and go across Ted Crozier and tie into the other side of Dunlop Lane. That is an overall major project. That is one piece of an overall major project to upgrade lines in that area, add additional lines and that's for capacity purposes, flow purposes, things like that as that area develops, just to be able to get more gas to that side of town. With that, we had plans to likely come before you with eminent domain, rights for eminent domain anyway. Before we did so, Mr. Dellinger and his team met with us about the business park project there. And with that, we decided to change our design instead of at that intersection going south to continue east and cross Ted Crozier and then come through the business park. Going the way that I had planned, we weren't really going to capture any more customers, anything like that. Going this route, the business park will need gas anyway, so it's just a better use of our funds and resources, as you can imagine. Had no idea at the time, but now, since then, just so happens I'm the interim director of the street department as well, so I get this on both ends. I had asked Mr. Dellinger at that time, let me come before the city council, since I was going to do it anyway with the utilities. With that business park and that street, it will alleviate a lot of the traffic issues that the city currently has at Ted Crozier and Dunlop by adding a new intersection there. And this will, the internal streets in that development will become city streets. This is one we have met with the owners and their legal representation, and basically they told us this is the process that we have to go through, which is not unusual. I can tell you in my time dealing with this, anytime we've been, all due respect with the owners of this property, this is the route they tell us every time. But every time we always go to them just in case. But that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Riggins. Councilperson Smith, you had a question for Mr. Riggins.
Sir.
You're recognized.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Mr. Riggins. You always do a good job explaining stuff. You make it plain and simple, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am.
This sewer pump station, how long is the sewage gonna be? The pipes, how long? Y'all know we're using a lot of property. How long is this?
Are you?
I'm referring to the sewer pump station. Or is it big, or is it you got to run sewage? Do you have to run pipes through these people's land, or?
Yeah, he's talking about the natural gas lines on these three. The previous group were dealing with wastewater.
I know you said
sewer.
8-inch gas lines. Right, 8-inch gas lines. You said something about that upgrade. But all of this property that we're taking for the, I mean, we have to have, and some are donating it. I mean, what is it
So-
for? I mean, I want to make sure I'm
Yes.
clear about this.
So on the first 8 ordinances that involve gas and water,
Oh,
those
it's
are
gas.
donations of property.
Okay,
That has
gas and
nothing to do with eminent domain.
Okay,
Those are small flag lot pieces of property that contain a driveway and a pump station.
okay,
There's enough room for me to get to it, access it with generators, pumps, things like that. And we want to own that property, and the developer wants me to own that property. They don't want to pay taxes, whatever, however small they may be, on that piece of property for the rest of their days and I want full control of that property as well. So on those, it's all donations on the
Okay.
first 8. On these 3, it's a easement for gas, an easement for a gas for a gas main. I apologize.
Oh,
High
okay.
Point Road is an easement for a gas main running along High Point Road. It's a 10-foot wide easement adjacent to High Point Road. On McAdoo Creek Road,
I understand that.
it's
I
for
get
that
you.
regulator
I got
station.
you. Okay,
And then on the other, it is for the right of way, any slope easements, any utility easements, and there's also other utility easements that go back along that skirt the property beyond the roadway project for
Right.
future projects with gas and water to support the business park and other ventures.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Riggins? Mr. Riggins, when is beaver hunting season?
There is one.
Okay, all right,
Yes, there.
okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 126, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance amending Title I, Administration, Officers, and Personnel, Chapter 2, City Council, Section 1-204, General Rules of Order of the Official Code of the City of Clarksville, Tennessee, relating to the notice of agendas for all meetings. The Finance Committee did recommend approval of this ordinance. This ordinance is necessary due to the new law that Tennessee has put in place requiring governments to notice these public meetings 48 hours in advance for agendas versus the 24 hours as it has been. So, and this has also been an opportunity to kind of clean up a few items that were missed in here. As you can see in red, some of the changes that were made is we've corrected it because we changed the start of the regular session year or two ago, but it wasn't updated in this part. So it's updated to show that the public comments are from 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Now, any person wishing to address the council shall make such a request to the city clerk by noon on Tuesday prior to the regular session. Then also, you can see where it's now, the mayor and city council members shall submit items for inclusion on regular session agenda to the city clerk at least 72 hours in advance, where it had previously been 48 hours. And yes, a member or the mayor submitting an item can direct the city clerk to put that item on the executive session agenda. You must submit that item to the city clerk to be placed on the executive session agenda at least 72 hours prior. Department heads may place items directly on standing committee agenda. Same thing, they must notify the clerk 72 hours in advance. And all agendas for all meetings shall be available to the public 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Councilperson Reynolds, a question on this ordinance.
Yeah, I was reading the ordinance and it caught my eye. That says, that, they're not allowed comments regarding zoning amendments during the public comment section. I was wondering if we as a body wanted to discuss changing that, or could we?
The public hearing portion is when people are allowed to be able to comment on the zoning cases. That's what that specific time frame is for, to be able to allow that. This is a public comment period for anything beyond that. Otherwise, I think you would end up having those public comment times filled up, and you wouldn't have the opportunity for the public to speak on other concerns.
We rarely fill up the slots, and oftentimes, it's very short notice from this meeting to the next when we're rezoning for the community to become aware. It's just a thought. I was wondering if anybody else felt the same.
Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up is Resolution 54, 2022, 23, a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, between the City of Clarksville Fire and Rescue and Tennessee Voices. Both the Finance and Public Safety Committees recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 60, 2022, 23, a resolution authorizing Mayor Pitts to file with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development the City of Clarksville's fiscal year 2023-2024 annual action plan and the fiscal year 2023-2024 application for community development, block grant funds, and home investments partnership program funds. Both the Finance and Neighborhood and Community Services Committee recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 61, 2022, 23, a resolution authorizing a request from Neighborhood and Community Services to amend its fiscal year 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan. Finance and Neighborhood Community Services Committee both recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 62, 2022, 23, authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and the City of Guthrie, Kentucky. Both Finance and Gas and Water Committees recommended approval. And Mayor, I don't think he's talked enough tonight. Could we ask Mr. Riggins to come up here again and talk
Well,
about
sure,
this?
sure. I think he's got information about beavers, maybe? No? Okay.
He
Mr.
Googled it while he...
Mr. Riggins.
Yes, I do. The season's year round, Mayor.
Okay, all right. All right, giddy up. Let's go.
I checked on my Tennessee Wildlife app when I got back to my seat. So on this resolution, if you'll look at the map in your packet there, you'll see, of course, an area in white, an area in green. You'll see a blank line at the top of the sheet. That is the state line. So move north of that is Kentucky, which we are not dealing with any property in Kentucky. And you'll look there in the white there, that is an area that currently the City of Guthrie serves the water service to now. Everything in green is currently gas and waters. The issue is there has never been, that we know of, either Guthrie or gas and water, there's never been any legislation or any other agreements of any kind that we know of defining that boundary line, which is very important for them, for us, for future planning, things like that, but also for the development community on knowing who to go to for service. If you'll look, the line right in the middle going north to south, that is Guthrie Road. The first street road off to the west is Sale Road, and then Swan Lane. Over to the right-hand side, that diagonal going northwest to southeast, that is Pineywood Road. Again, any home or business, I don't know that there's many businesses, there are some churches there, again, that are located within that white area there are currently served by Guthrie. What spurred this, there is some movement in the development community about wanting to develop some of these properties, and they want to know where they're getting their services from, especially sewer, if that's available. Again, with us, we've worked very closely with Guthrie on this to draw this up. Every line here, the reason it's jagged the way it is, it follows property lines, parcel lines. That way we're not cutting anyone's farm into, property into, anything like that. This whole farm is served by either us or by Guthrie. And again, this would give, what it does is it just says that we're foregoing the rights for anything in white, water, sewer, anything further there. And then in the green, the City of Guthrie is agreeing to forego any rights there. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Comment or question? Thank you, Mr. Riggins.
Thank you, Mayor.
Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. One more thing I did mean to mention when I was talking about the ordinance regarding the timing of the agendas. Many y'all may have noticed that the finance committee changed from the Tuesday before this meeting to now being held on Mondays. That will be the case going forward. This is it to allow as much time as possible for the city clerk to be able to get everything on there, because with that meeting not starting until 4:30, that would be at the time that needs to be posted for the agenda. And she needs to be able to have whether or not there's approvals or postponements and so forth. So just for everybody's calendar purposes, the finance meeting is now held at 4:30 on the Monday prior to the executive meeting. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. We're now ready for Gas and Water Committee. Chairperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Chairperson Shekina, Community and Neighborhood and Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a full report next week.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
I'll call on you to do the Public Safety Committee. I think you chaired that in Chairman Red's absence. You're
I
recognized.
did, Mayor. Thank you. Ordinance 113, 2022, 23, first reading, an ordinance amending the official code of the City of Clarksville, Title 4, Building, Utility, and Housing Codes, Chapter 10, relative to graffiti control and abatement. This is an ordinance that was brought to the Public Safety Committee by Councilperson Reynolds. The crux of this is whether chalk specifically should be included in the graffiti abatement program. The general discussion was chalk is a temporary marking that we can reasonably expect to go away with rain. There was some question about graffiti versus vandalism. A lot of discussion. Ultimately, we did vote to recommend approval based on the understanding that the sponsor was going to work at cleaning up some of those issues. If the sponsor has some further clarification, I would like to ask her to speak on that.
I'll recognize the sponsor, Councilperson Reynolds.
Thank you. And I appreciate the conversation at the Public Safety Committee meeting. The overarching concern for this ordinance is to protect our first responders and the city at large from being involved in disputes over items being written in chalk. As it stands right now, sidewalk chalk is not allowed on any public surface. I just want to share two recent incidents are what led to this. In one incident, a neighbor painted a pickleball court on a cul-de-sac road in permanent paint that had to be cleaned off by the city department. The items were donated, but it did take time from our city department. Those were not cited. Neighbors wrote on the road with sidewalk chalk, and they were told if they did not wash it off, they would be cited. So some equitable or inequitable enforcement. This amendment was I had planned to do an amendment, and I still would like to ask Mr. Davis Smith to come up and discuss the conversation. There wasn't a meeting per the chair's request with me and Mr. Zach Johnston from the legal department and Mr. Smith from the director of building codes. We had proposed an amendment, but late this afternoon, while I was unfortunately in a meeting with Ms. Mata, Mr. Baker did weigh in and say that he did not agree with the amendment that we had agreed to put in place, and he has some recommendations. So I guess at this point, our original conversation was just to move to to amending the official code of the City of Clarksville, Title 10, Offenses Miscellaneous, Section 10.225, offenses against property. But that is what we're not going to do, and we're going to go back to the discussion of just removing the word chalk. So, Mr. Baker, if you want to.
Mr. Baker, you have been asked to weigh in on the issue, so you are recognized, sir.
So I don't see a legal problem with removing the word chalk from the Title 4, Chapter 10, Section 4-1001. That section or that chapter deals specifically with graffiti control and abatement. Which graffiti in the context of graffiti control and abatement is something different legally speaking, conceptually wise, than vandalism. Vandalism is an actual criminal offense under the Tennessee criminal law. And we also have a separate, our own city code ordinance that kind of mirrors the state criminal vandalism law. That's section 10-225, basically that talks about no person shall willfully, maliciously, wantonly, or negligently injure, deface, destroy, or remove real property or improvements thereto, or movable personal property belonging to the city or to any person in the city. So it's worded a little differently than the state criminal vandalism law, but it's very similar in its purpose and intent and even the language. But of course, our city ordinances are not criminal laws. They are civil ordinances that carry a maximum fine of $50, which is a civil fine, not a criminal fine. The problems with what Councilmember Reynolds and the discussion that she did have with Mr. Smith and Mr. Johnston of my office is that the proposal was going to be to add additional language besides just deleting the word chalk, to say that, and the language that I had was, it's not an offense for a person to engage in, quote, expressive conduct or constitutionally expressive conduct or constitutionally protected expressive conduct on public sidewalks or walkways using non-permanent, non-toxic chalk in a manner that does not obstruct or interfere with their use. And most of that language is okay, but the problem comes in the expressive conduct, constitutionally expressive or constitutionally protected expressive, however you want to word it. All of those words together, in my legal opinion and view, a court would clearly strike down as being unconstitutionally vague. And it does, in my view, exactly what I think Councilmember Reynolds is trying to not do and trying to avoid. And that is, we do not want our police officers and or our city building code officials from having to make on the spot, on the street, sidewalk, off the cuff decisions about whether something is constitutionally permissible or not. First of all, they're not trained as lawyers or judges, and what they think about it is not going to be binding on a judge. And if they make a wrong decision, they're almost certainly going to get sued in a civil rights lawsuit under pursuant to 42 United States Code Section 1983, which you all are very familiar with those types of lawsuits. We deal with those all the time. And it would probably be, in my opinion, a losing lawsuit. And we would have to pay not only damages, but the other side's attorney's fees as well. And the reason why I say all this is because there's numerous, for decades, United States Supreme Court opinions and United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, which Tennessee is a part of, and Tennessee Supreme Court decisions that reiterate over and over again that under First Amendment law, First Amendment jurisprudence, local governments, and any governments for that matter, national or state, but governments cannot pass regulations that make a distinction or discriminate based on the content of the message or the idea or the appearance of the marking. What they can do is pass reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And we have throughout our city code time, place, and manner restrictions on a lot of things that would otherwise be protected First Amendment activity or speech or conduct. And specifically, I've looked at, the graffiti abatement code, and as it's currently worded, all it does really is it doesn't really prohibit any kind of First Amendment protected speech. Instead, what it says is, if there is graffiti, we can tell property owners to clean it up. And if they don't, then we can clean it up ourselves through our abatement crews, in-house or contracted, and then we can send you a bill for it. And if you fail to pay it, we can put a lien on your property. And these types of abatement ordinances are common throughout the country, and I believe have routinely been held to be constitutional as an action, a permissible legal action of local or any governments through the police power. And it doesn't raise any constitutional hackles or issues so long as the abatement program or law or ordinance does not call for a discretionary decision from some administrative decision maker, law officer, building code official, that requires them to make a decision about based on what the content of the message is. So it's okay if you say you can't have any chalk, you can't have any dye, you can't have any paint, basically you can't do vandalism. And it leads to the question, okay, well, you're saying you can't have graffiti and we can make people, clean it up, and if they don't pay for it, we can do it ourselves and make them pay for it. It begs the question, well, okay, who gets to decide what is graffiti? And the good news is our graffiti abatement code actually defines it in a way that puts the onus of decision on the property owner themselves or their agent. And how it's defined basically is it's any marking, literally any marking that is unauthorized. And marking, of course, is a term that's just, it's a common definition and a common dictionary. You don't have to have a legal dictionary to define what a marking is. But unauthorized is specifically defined in the code, and it means without approval or permission of the property owner or an agent of the property owner. And so if the property owner says, I didn't authorize this marking, I don't approve of this marking, then they are the responsible person for cleaning it up. And if they don't, then that's where the abatement process comes in. And so that is how it's defined. Graffiti is marking that is not approved by the owner, and is therefore unauthorized. So the advice that I would give is that if you want to remove chalk that's legally permissible, I don't see any legal issues with that, because you don't have to have a graffiti ordinance at all, abatement ordinance. You don't have to have a vandalism ordinance at all. But if you're going to try to massage it in some way to say, oh, well, you can't use chalk unless it's constitutionally protected activity, then that actually invites a decision maker to make a decision that is based on the content of the message, and that's absolutely illegal and what we can't do. The only issue, and this, and I'll shut up, with chalk, removing the word chalk, again, no legal issues, but I do see there could be practical enforcement issues. And what I mean by that is, okay, so we remove the word chalk. That means that anybody can do chalk art, do chalk messaging on city buildings, city streets, city sidewalks, maybe even on private property, but then the private property owner could charge them with vandalism. If they do it on public property, streets or sidewalks, the city could seek criminal charges for vandalism. But where the problem comes in is, okay, who's going to clean it up? And you won't have the tool in the tool chest to get a property owner to clean up chalk messaging.
Councilperson Reynolds?
So we don't list all the items that could be used. We didn't say you can't paint a pickleball court on the cul-de-sac, but it did qualify, and we could have. So I'm just saying that we don't have to expressly put, and you, I think we talked about this outside, we don't list every item that could be used as vandalism, but it's still, the wording in the ordinance is still enough that if vandalism is the intent, then it's still available to use this ordinance and to charge just taking chalk out doesn't really take that away. It just makes it a little less a little more onerous to decide, and hopefully makes it so our police do not have to get in the middle of what little Susie wrote on the sidewalk last week compared to what their beliefs are.
Right, you're exactly correct and all that. The way graffiti is defined, it says means unauthorized markings visible from premises open to the public that have been placed upon any property, could be public or private, through the use of paint, ink, chalk, dye, and then it has a catch-all, or any other substance capable of marking property. If you remove chalk from that definition, it's not going to do away with the graffiti abatement. It's just going to be, you can't go after owners or their agents of property that have chalk based graffiti on it. We can't charge them. That's all it does. People who do the chalk, as long as it meets the definition of vandalism under either the city code or the state criminal law, they could still be charged with vandalism. The city could still clean up its own property, obviously, but we just wouldn't be able to get private property owners we couldn't force them to clean up their own property or charge them if we had to do it for them if it's chalk. And it does bring up an interesting question that we talked very briefly about that. Well, if you take the word chalk out, there's still the catch-all provision that any other substance capable of marking property. So even if you remove the word chalk, it could be argued on first instance or first glance that, oh, well, chalk is really kind of still included because chalk is any other substance capable of marking property. But there are rules of statutory construction or law construction that courts follow in interpreting ordinances and statutes and constitutions. And one of the rules is if a legislative body has a law before it and they delete something from that law, then, and there's still a catch-all provision, then the courts will interpret the law as meaning that even the catch-all does not include what was expressly deleted because that was the actual intent of the legislative body.
But they can still be charged with vandalism.
They could be, yes.
So the stick is still there.
I believe so.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Hang on, Mr. Baker. I have a list. Councilperson Holloman, did you have a question or comment for Mr. Baker?
Not for Mr. Baker, no.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councilperson McLaughlin for Mr. Baker?
No.
Councilperson Streetman for Mr. Baker?
Yes.
You are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, unless I'm taking this wrong, from everything you just told me, then really this, just taking the word chalk out, the time we're spending on this to talk about this really doesn't accomplish much.
It just prevents the city from going after property owners who refuse to clean up chalk graffiti.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baker, let's get the grass down where the goats can get it, as Jim Amos used to say to me. If somebody comes out, if we do this, somebody comes out and draws a swastika in front of my house in chalk, what's my remedy?
Well, if it's on the city street, the city is the property owner and we can just go and have it removed. We can just clean it up. If they draw it though on a private property owner's property and that person objects to it, whatever it is, then we won't be able to force them to remove it. We won't be able to force them to pay for the removal.
Thank you. Okay, Councilperson Holloman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I feel like this is kind of kind of a waste of time up here for everything that we handle. But this is a question for the sponsor. So the first one was a pickleball court that was painted and the people did not get cited. And then you said there's a chalk drawing where the people get cited. What was the chalk drawing of?
The chalk drawing was written on the road. It said it's not the guns. No, it is the guns.
So it was
It's
a
the
political
guns.
message.
It was a political message written in chalk on the road.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments are kind of similar or along the same path of yours. So when I first saw this, I automatically went to the code to see what is determined to be obscene, because a lot of the graffiti, at least that I see on buildings that I contact codes about, is of a sexual obscene nature. And my concern is that somebody draws something that is considered to be obscene where children see it or whatnot, and we don't have rain for 60 days and it's on a street and it may take time to get cleaned up based on the workload of city employees. That is a concern of mine. And then also the fact that we may not have a big chalk issue on city property now, but this also might encourage it. I appreciate the discussion. I hadn't really thought about sidewalk chalk, except that we do participate, like your resolution said, in sponsoring events that encourage that, where it's regulated and it is at the property owner, meaning the city or the county, at their encouragement for a purpose. So I'm just concerned that we can never think of all the sides of things, but I'm thinking about a body part being chalked on a street by a bus stop or whatnot. And those are the graffiti spray paint things that I like to turn in immediately. So I'm bringing that up for conversational purposes. I'm not trying to get into the First Amendment right side of thing, but I'm coming from that side of things. So thank you.
Under the U.S. Supreme Court precedent, First Amendment laws, First Amendment jurisprudence, there is only one category, maybe possibly two. And one is very limited. Really only one category of speech, whether you're putting a drawing on chalk or spray painting or speaking orally, whatever. It's all First Amendment categorized as First Amendment speech. It's messaging. It's ideas. There's one category that is expressly not protected by the First Amendment, and that is pornography. And we're all probably familiar with the famous United States Supreme Court decision where one of the justices said, I can't really define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And so the courts have struggled for many decades to really kind of draw the line, or where is the line between pornography and art. The case law is frankly all over the place, but that is not protected. The other thing that has traditionally not been given protection under First Amendment speech is the classic example where someone goes into a crowded theater and yells the word fire. That's like an incitement to violence, incitements to riot. That is not protected speech. But other than those two things, almost everything else, not almost everything else, is protected First Amendment speech. And it would include things like that I believe, the vast majority of our public would find extremely offensive. Things like a swastika, for example. And we can all think of many different other things other than pornography that a lot of people would find extremely offensive. But remember, the First Amendment is designed to protect that thing, that speech, that conduct, that message that the vast majority of people disagree with and find extremely offensive.
Sure.
So I thank you, Mr. Baker, but I forgot to mention Chapter 2, Section 10-211 of the code has the definition of obscene that I'm concerned about, if you want to take a look at that. But it's in our city code, just for reference sake. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'm kind of going to start a little bit with the top here. It's referencing in this ordinance, whereas the city has encouraged sidewalk art at Liberty Park and the downtown commons, of course, the Liberty Park and the sidewalks there are owned by the city. The downtown commons, the park itself and the sidewalks surrounding it are both owned by the county. I'm going to clue that in down to where we're talking about graffiti means unauthorized markings. Those are either city or county sanctioned events, and that's why those have been particularly allowed in that case. I know Chalk Walk's not even held at the downtown commons anymore. It's held in a parking lot on, I believe, private property that has that. But you know, we talk about there's a potential of it encouraging. You know, again, we don't have a real chalk problem at all, but we don't want to encourage it. And I think about the fact beyond when we just think about what's offensive, well, what's going to be offensive to a small business owner that has public sidewalks right in front of them? And you think about all of our downtown businesses, those sidewalks in front of them, those are city property. So what if there's a derogatory message written about the business? I don't know many small business owners that have a lot of spare time on their hands, and I don't know a lot of city employees that do either. So you're going to be adding to their task of somebody's going to have to get out there and remove it, whether it's that small business owner or one of their employees, and whether it's a city employee that's having to go down there and do it. And what if it repeatedly happens? You're again, taken away, and then there's nothing that can be done because, we've taken this word out. So again, it's beyond even just thinking offensive, but what's also derogatory. I can't see any reason why we're doing this. And again, we're talking about an issue that's not been a real problem. I'm not aware that I've had anybody reach out to me over chalk problems. I don't know how many else on the council other than the sponsor of this, but I do know that we have now been discussing this for 25 minutes. And I don't know if either the building and codes or the police department has spent 25 minutes in the last week fielding calls about chalk. So me personally, I see no reason why we need to make this change. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd just like to say that the removal of the chalk isn't going to change. Like, it's not going to make it any longer if someone does something on the road that needs to be removed and you call it in. That's not going to change. That process will not change. What will change is that kids who go out and do something on the street or teenagers right now, that's a really hot button, that they're not going to have a knock on the door and be told that they could be charged with vandalism. And so just to let you know, to the previous speaker, that the incident I'm referring to actually occurred in your ward, and your person reached out to me.
Okay, I see nothing else. Chairperson Zacharias, you're still recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Some people have
before you go, let's refrain. Let's refrain from making it personal. Councilperson Zacharias.
Yes, Mayor. Either Chairperson Rudd or myself will have a full report next week.
Okay, thank you. Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee Chairperson Smith, you are recognized.
Yes, I have a report for you on June 1st.
All right, thank you. We're now ready for new business, Resolution 67, 2022-23, a resolution requesting the mayor to call 3 sessions of the city council as a committee of the whole to participate in vision sessions. Councilperson Reynolds, you're the sponsor. You are recognized.
Yes, thank you. I talked about this last executive meeting, and then I put this out because several people seem to think it was a good idea. I'm stealing from Germantown. They do this about quarterly, and they get together with the mayor and they talk about, as a council person, something they'd like to see happen in their ward, and the mayor talks about some of the things that he's working on. So we're not up here in short sound bites. It's not a mandatory meeting. It's not a voting session, but it's more of an educational. One of the examples that I would foresee using this for would be, like, I'm currently working on updating the sidewalk ordinance. It will be on the agenda, hopefully, at the next Transportation Streets Committee. I'm not ready to propose the amendment, but I plan to formally begin staffing the suggestions or concerns. My overarching goal is to update the ordinance to provide an option to pay in lieu of building a sidewalk to nowhere, as which we hear often in the Planning Commission. and to update the sidewalk matrix to reflect the increased parent responsibility zone for schools. I have a meeting next week to go in to meet with Sarah Cox, who is the Healthy Development Coordinator, to talk about what ADA, PROAG, and TDOT requirements are in the state. So just kind of sharing that and getting everybody's input. I think it's important to improve our collaboration and honestly, so we're not trying to fix things with an amendment on the floor, just have conversations. Not a required meeting, perhaps a Saturday morning breakfast or something like that, open to the public. So I think it'll be good, and then budget season will be much easier for all of us as well. Thank you.
Comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for mayor and council member comments. Any councilperson Streetman, you have a comment?
I do, Mayor. I wanted to tell everybody about a new podcast that I've recently come across. It's not new, so to speak, but it was new to me. It is called On Public Square. This is actually a podcast that is put on by our own communications department, Mr. Casey Williams and Mr. Jimmy Settle. They've got 6 episodes out there so far. You can find this on Spotify, but it is very interesting. I haven't gotten to listen to all of them yet, but I'm really enjoying doing so. But it's a great opportunity for the public to learn more about the employees that work for the city of Clarksville and the things they're involved with, as well as to learn more about different things the city is involved with. One of the ones I've already listened to is we've got Levon Bracey and Michelle Klein talking about our lead program. So, it's really another way that the city of Clarksville is using to educate the public about the services that we offer. I know the newest one that came out is about Riverfest and the changes that are coming about with that. So I'm excited to get to it. Michelle Lau is on there talking about diversity. The only thing is I do wish when Jimmy Settle was talking about himself, he would have at least pointed out that he was a Cardinals fan. But other than that,
You're out of order.
other than that, this is a great podcast, and I encourage everybody, please go out there and listen. I know Casey's goal is to try and put out about 2 a month. I think it's every other Friday or the first and third Friday. Forgive me for not remembering that specific detail. But again, this is a podcast that is located on Spotify, and it's called On Public Square, which is, of course, where we're located. City Hall is located, and you might hear him tell you that was where he got the idea for the name. So please check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate the CMCSS graduating class of 2023, especially one graduate in particular. My daughter, Erica, is graduating on Saturday, the last one. So congratulations, Pumpkin. We're all very proud of you. And then second, this actually kind of touches on the Resolution 67 in new business, because I wanted to take this opportunity to mention that I did receive a question this month relative to the city's livestock ordinance as it pertains to hens in the city limits. The reason I bring it up is because after talking with Mr. Baker, I have learned that this was a highly controversial and divisive issue last time it came up. And I do plan to meet with Mr. Baker and Mr. Smith from Building and Codes and try to extend the privilege of owning chickens in certain residentially zoned areas in city limits to renters with the permission and knowledge of the property owners where it currently does not exist. So look forward to exciting discussions of domesticated hens in city limits next month.
May the force be with you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you are recognized.
Thank you. I'll be absent when we're discussing chickens. No, seriously. So next Tuesday, May 30th at 5:30 is the kickoff of the first Mayor's Summer Night Lights, and I'm excited that it'll be in Ward 2 at Kleeman Community Center. So come on out. There'll be various vendors and activities. Again, that's 5:30 to 7:30 on Tuesday, May 30th at Kleeman Community Center. Then also recently, Ms. Letourneau from the Parks and Recreation Department sent out a press release about public comment meetings pertaining to the future use of Bel Air Pool. They will take place also Tuesday, May 30th, 5:30 to 7:30 at Kleeman Community Center. And then if you miss Tuesday, Wednesday, May 31st at Bel Air Park, also 5:30 to 7:30. There's been a lot of interest in the future of that pool. Somebody's child, mine, actually took swimming lessons at that pool when she was young. And so please participate in this. This is your community park and your pool. And then also on Wednesday, May 31st at 5:30 is my next town hall meeting. It's at the Clarksville Police Department, District 1 Precinct, 211 Cunningham Lane. All are welcome. It doesn't matter where you live. And then finally, happy 31st wedding anniversary to my husband, David. We celebrated last week. Some celebrated more than others, but I'm a gift giver. Okay, that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Streven?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to tack on a little bit there to Ward 2's, mentioning that she's going to be going to the Mayor's Summer Night Lights. I always look forward to that every year. So I'm going to put the request out that maybe we can, that Parks and Rec can make sure we have that tug of war rope and we can really have some fun while we're there. I promise to wear like flat shoes so that we can, have a little competition and get the kids involved as well.
Thank you. Any other comment from the council? Seeing none, we're now ready for public comments. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council? If you would, please, sir, come forward. Give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is David Colback. I live Regency Park Apartments. I'm a Clarksville native, a veteran of 24 years, a retiree, and I'm handicapped. A few years ago, Channel 5 News did a spot on Clarksville's problem with handicap parking violations. It was a 2-minute spot, I believe. From my experience, from that time till now, nothing has changed. Clarksville is letting its entire handicapped community down. Handicap parking violations continue to run rampant. In my research on the subject, I made a public records request for a list of citations for handicap parking violations issued by Clarksville's Police Department in 2022. The list is 6. All of them, on the information I got from the police department, show that those citations are unpaid. Tennessee law states that anyone who violates handicap parking law is subject to a large fine and community service assisting the handicapped. This shows how seriously our state government treats the problem. But the law is useless if not enforced. Just in this year, I've confronted 7 violators. And this is just going through my day, shopping and such. All of who were food delivery drivers, the DoorDash, Uber Eats, and et cetera. Their attitude is that they feel entitled to use those spots because, in their words, they'll only be there for a minute. These food delivery services are becoming more and more popular, and the problem is on the rise. I know for a fact you can go to Walmart on Madison, or you can go to that strip mall on Madison where Jersey Mike's is during meal hours, and you can spot an offender any day of the week. I myself have called CPD 3 times, and of those 3 occasions, not a single citation was written. Everything considered, I'd say the city of Clarksville shows a pattern, practice, and policy of ignoring violations of handicap parking laws. I say again, pattern, practice, and policy of ignoring these violations. If the city wants to reverse this growing trend, a good starting point would be public education. How much time have I got left? Anybody? Oh, there it is.
You're on the clock, Mr. Colback.
I see that now, yeah. Public education. Use the Leaf Chronicle, use Clarksville Now, use the radio stations. Let the public know that the city will be paying attention to this issue. A CPD officer recently told me that because I was complaining that if I were to sit in the parking lot, call the police, 40 minutes later, they show up, but this violator's been gone for 10 minutes already. He said, take a picture of their car parked in that spot, showing their license plate. Show that to a cop, and the cop can trace it down to the owner of the vehicle and issue a citation. And I don't know if he's just blowing smoke or if it's true, but your city attorney can find out if it's true. If it's not true, we can at least have a public program to where people can send pictures to, say, a page on the police department's website. And then one officer, every week can just go down through the pictures and at least make contact with these offenders and let them know that they're being watched. Yeah. Well, a CPD officer told me that they're busy with felonies and they're shorthanded. I say direct the chief to enforce the laws, the handicap parking laws, and they'll work out how to do that. Public education, part of the idea, should vastly reduce the violations. And that's about all I've got. Has anybody got any questions for
This is a public comment. You have our attention. This is not a Q&A. I'd appreciate it, Mr. Callback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other member of the public wish to address the council? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.